So lots of talk this week about Goldman Sachs, not surprising. Part of it was because Fortune magazine came out with a piece that said Lloyd Blankfein, the chairman and CEO, would be stepping down sometime before the end of the year. We've got our own take on this. As Breakingviews readers know, we've had a long time governance view on Goldman Sachs, which is that the chairman and CEO roles should be split. But it looks like that's
well, if they're not going to do it for if they're not going to do it for the moral good or the good of shareholders, they may have a self-interested reason now to do it.
Right, which is that Lloyd Blankfein could step up to the sole chairman's role, open up the chief executive's role for, well,
I mean, it assumes that Lloyd,
whoever it would be. One assumes, well, Fortune certainly assumes it's Gary Cohn as president.
Right.
But who knows? It doesn't have to be him.
I mean, he has been the COO and the president for a long time. I mean, you look at
they're joined at the hip.
They're joined at the hip, exactly.
Well, it also presumes that Blankfein is looking for some way out. I mean, if he is, he's been there 6 years. You know, for the most part, he's navigated them through some pretty tough times. Through some
I wrote this piece that said basically that you know, they've been mostly productive, I guess, the 6 years that he's been there. And I mean, 6 years, by the way, is like double the average length tenure of a CEO in corporate America. First of all, those 6 years have been exceptionally difficult, grueling, and fat. I mean, if you think about it, the variance of the years. I mean, let's see, you were pointing out that 2009 was their best year for profits ever.
Thanks to taxpayers, right?
Well, thanks to whatever happened in the market, but certainly after the bailouts of 2008, you had 2006, 2007 were also fat years. But then, of course, as you point out, there have been difficult years. I mean,
so he's been through the highs, he's been through the lows. I mean, the point you raise, I think, is also interesting about whether or not the shares need to be trading at or around book value. If that's kind of a pivot point for him to kind of go out on not necessarily a high, but certainly a rebound.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't suggest that they've got this sort of, the board has this red alert. No, so when the stock hits 130, 150, everyone says, okay, now we can change it. But certainly, if I were Lloyd, you know, you would feel much better about going out at when basically the market is valuing your balance sheet for the value that you ascribe to it.
What was it you wrote? He's presided over a book value increase of
it's doubled.
100%. Yeah, it's doubled. So
it's doubled.
You don't really want to leave when it's below. Then again, book value isn't such a
you can't necessarily control how people
for banks,
people value your stock. Yeah. I mean, you know, ultimately the whole financial sector has been re-rated. But at least you can go out there and say, okay, at least people give us credit for what we're giving them in terms of our assets minus our liabilities.
But the ultimate question is, if this solution, if it gives Blankfein a graceful exit to move into the chairman role and someone else CEO, I mean, in terms of governance,
which is what John Mack did. Remember, with
John
Mack was set to retire by the end of last year anyway. So we kind of knew that he would want to move out gradually. He maybe left the CEO role.
It's not the best solution for shareholders.
It's not,
I mean,
think about how it's going to work. You've got the guy who used to run the company now running the board and overall strategy, trying not to get in the way, allegedly, of the guy who now runs the company in his stead. And it's just, although they joined at the hip, I mean, you've got to guess that if it's Gary Cohn who gets the job, that he'll want to put his own stamp on the firm somehow, and that's harder to do when you've got
which raises another question for another story, which is whether Gary Cohn, if indeed this is the solution that Goldman chooses, whether he's the right guy for the job.
Yeah, but that's all about whether you think Blankfein is going because he's somehow tainted as a result of the last 2 or 3 years. And if he is, then Cohn shouldn't take it. But if you think that he's not tainted and he's leaving because he wants to leave, then there's nothing wrong with Gary Cohn taking the job. But it's a question of how it then gets perceived outside the company, where a lot of people think Blankfein should leave because he's Lloyd Blankfein and he works at Goldman.
Right. No, that's right. Well, there's a lot of people who think Goldman Sachs shouldn't exist, but that's another topic completely. We'll be back with more Breaking Views next week.